Engagement and communication, two words you're going to hear about today from Nick Mautone. Here's a person who has been in an industry that is all about continually having to train people up in a myriad of different ways. So we're going to learn about employee development from a master today. Check it out.
Welcome to Masters of Employee Development, Mike Acker's YouTube segment devoted to training team members in any type of organization. Your host is a best-selling author, corporate trainer, and business leader. Find out more about Mike at mikeacker.com. Each episode, Mike welcomes a CEO, HR director, or other experienced manager responsible for leadership and development. Together, Mike and his guest expert discuss training successes, challenges, and best practices. Lean in, listen, and take part in a community dedicated to improving life through increasing leadership. Now, here's your host, Mike Acker.
Nick, thank you so much for being here today. I'm excited to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me, Mike.
Now, we're talking about leadership development. We call this Masters of Employee Development. So talk to me a little bit about you, where you come from, why you are a person who has some experience in this area.
You got it. Thank you for asking. By way of introduction, I'm a 40-year hospitality professional. It's all I've ever done. And I remember the day when I looked my mother in the eye and said, "Mom, I'm not going to medical school. I'm opening up a restaurant with my brothers, our brothers." And, about 3 days later, when she stopped crying, she said, "Just be a great one." And I've never looked back. And during that time, I was 21 at the time. My younger brothers were 19. My older brother was 24. And we made a heck of a lot of mistakes in that first business. So the lessons in leadership that I've learned over the years, and mentorship and employee development and training, truly came through, as most people say, the school of hard knocks. I made a lot of mistakes, learned from those mistakes, and been able to develop them. But in the intervening years, since that day, talking to my mom, and today, I've had the joy of working in an industry that I just truly love and truly care about. Had some great partners, some great businesses I've been with. Most people know me reputationally by my tenure as managing partner of Gramercy Tavern. So I was a partner in Gramercy in the Union Square Hospitality Group, formative years of the Union Square Hospitality Group, where we had just two restaurants, Union Square Cafe and Gramercy Tavern, and stayed with them from 1995 through 2003. When I left, we had 6 fine dining restaurants, if you will, and I moved on to start my consulting company called Mautone Enterprises. Union Square Hospitality Group has since moved on to plethora of businesses, including the parent company of Shake Shack, if you're familiar with them. So great leadership learnings there. But during my time at Mautone Enterprises, I've worked with celebrity chefs like Rachel Ray, Tom Colicchio, a whole slew of others. I was a consultant to the Television Food Network. And most recently, and I think a great topic for me, is aside from the 100 or so businesses that I've helped open or turn around, I've had the joy of being the person who turned around the iconic Rainbow Room in Manhattan. So 90-year-old business that was taken over by Tishman Speyer. They own Rockefeller Center in New York. Rainbow Room started by John D. Rockefeller in 1934. And when Tishman took it over as an ownership, right, because they had leased it out at one point, they renovated it, put a lot of effort into it, a lot of money into it. And when I was brought in 2015, they just weren't hitting their mark. And they realized, to their credit, they realized, we are not operators. We don't know how to fix this. Let's bring in people who do. So I came in with a team of associates that I work with, and we turned it around. And subsequently, they made me an offer I couldn't refuse, to stay on as managing director for hospitality within the firm. So I worked not only on keeping the Rainbow Room going and maintaining its status, its iconic status, if you will. And when I left in 2019, it's one of the highest grossing food service operations in the world. So I think we did a great job at a great time with Tishman, and now I'm focused on my writing career and the next stage of life, if you will, and I do take some consulting projects here and there. But over the years, I've had the opportunity to interview, hire, train, mentor, and lead a variety of people in a variety of environments. So it's one of my favorite topics to talk about.
Well, let's go back to the hard knocks then, because
Please.
A lot of the people that I get a chance to talk to on this YouTube segment /podcast, are people who are in the current corporate world training people, and there's a way that looks like. Now, there is obviously a corporate side to the restaurant business. It sounds like the way that you got into this was ground up.
That's correct.
And in the restaurant business, this is how I paid my way through college, was 4 years in the restaurant business. And there's a lot of turnaround, there's a lot of movement, there's a lot of youth, there can be a lot of immaturity. There's a lot of maturity as well, but there can be a lot of maturity. Yep. I mean, I was definitely that 18, 19-year-old who was getting upset because of the stress of the moment. So what are some of the things that you do to develop people in that kind of environment?
It's a great question, and one that I love talking about. I'll start by, first and foremost, I had worked in restaurants prior to opening my own business with my brothers. And I found that more often than not, the learnings that I got prior to being an operator were what I would call negative learnings, right? How I did not want to be treated. Therefore, when I was the boss, I tried very hard to treat people the way I wanted to be treated when I was an employee. And it stuck with me for the rest of my life. It has still been that way. So I, again, made a lot of mistakes, don't get me wrong, but I really felt that I came from a core value of treating people the way I wanted to be treated, training people the way I would have wanted to have been trained when I was an employee, and then just kept carrying that forward and building upon that. And so over the years, you eliminate one mistake and then you burnish some of the things that were good, what I call progressive training. I'm sure you've heard different terms in different way, where you bring on a new employee, whether it's a server, a bartender, a manager, or what have you, you take them from zero and giving them a progressive, you need to learn this today. You need to maintain that learnings. Tomorrow, you need to learn something else. The next day, you learn something else, and keep building upon that in an incremental fashion so that the person can really develop the skills the way you want them to. So I think that progressive incremental training method has been, I think, the greatest thing I learned, again, from not having been trained that way early in my business career, or my work life career, if you will. But when I got to the owner operator level, it made a big difference for me.
What are the challenges with training that way? And as you were saying that, I actually was thinking about this morning because I went golfing with my golf instructor, right? Sure. And he's always telling me something new every single week. He's like, "We're doing this. You got to twist your body like this." Sure. He's bending me like a pretzel, making sure that all the different things that are going on. But it is a little bit of, as soon as you said that, I thought, well, that's what we've been doing. You got to remember this. Next lesson, you got to bring that in, remember that, and then do this, and then next one. Right. So to me, sometimes there's a lot of stuff in my head. And so I get in my head. That's the challenge for me in golf. Well, what challenges do you see with progressive training in that type in the corporate world, in the business world?
Yeah, I think, again, great question, because there's a different nuance to it, right? Many leaders of any organization are looking to hire qualified employees, right? Whether it's a manager, whether it's a frontline employee in my industry. And so they look for that experience in the background. At Gramercy Tavern, we wanted someone, using Gramercy Tavern as an example, or Rainbow Room as an example, you'd want to hire people with similar background and similar mindset. Now, the challenge that brings, and I kind of threw that model out, I'll explain that in a moment, but the challenge that brings is when you get into an incremental training, if you have someone with 10, 12, 15 years experience in a similar restaurant, they believe they already know how to do the job, and therefore get bored during that incremental progressive training. And they have the stuff in their head like, well, I didn't do this at restaurant XYZ or restaurant Joe or restaurant whatever. Why am I doing it here? But the mindset is, I want employees who are going to work within our method. Their personality can shine. They can exude all the warmth and hospitality that they have inbred in them. But we want them to work on the methodology that we have, because I think that makes a consistent process, a consistent service point. And so the challenge becomes breaking an employee of, I won't say bad habits, but habits they developed in their career prior to working for me, and then remodeling that or refashioning that into the way we want them to work. So it's not an easy process, but the right employee, who's smart and has the right work ethic, will get it and will thrive in that.
Now, the other issue then with that is it seems more time consuming.
Yes, it is.
So how do you systematize it so that you can do it, but not take as much time?
So that is probably the most difficult part, because and you can see what's happening now in retail and restaurant and hospitality, where there's a dire need for new employees. I went through the same thing post 9/11 in 2001 and post financial crisis in 2008. So, but what I recommend to people is maintain your core values. If you need an employee to work in a specific fashion, and the incremental progressive training that I just outlined, or I could outline, it take too much time, I think, takes many days. All right. So get a server on the floor in my methodology is a minimum of 7 days. And then its training continues thereafter. For a manager, it might be a minimum of 3 weeks. And then the training continues from thereafter. However, during these times, and I call these crisis moments, right, where you are in dire need of employees, how do you manage that? So it's very simple. You take the module, right? I need someone to be an effective server on the floor in, let's call it 3 days, as opposed to 7 days. How can I do that in such a way is to break up that 7-day process, compress it a little bit, give the employee a little bit of homework, maybe pay them for that if you need to, but give them a little bit of work at home that they can study and understand. Get them on the floor as fast as possible, but then you need to do consistent ongoing training in a more urgent fashion. So it's compress the incremental training into a shorter block of time, get the employee up and running faster. However, you need to be diligent and vigilant in getting that training, that ongoing training, continuing.
What you just talked about right there is a great way to systematize it, because, and I'm all about systems. Like, for example, my second book I wrote is on how to write speeches. And system for how to do it. Like, just do this, run these 6 steps again and again and again. You can write speeches. And I think what you're saying there is look at those values, systematize it, plan it out in advance. Don't kind of wing it. Don't just have it in your head that you're doing it and going again and again and again. And that's how you're able to go from 2 to 6 and,
Great. And if I can add to that, if I may, the process has to start during the interview, right? From the moment you're interviewing that employee, I'm thinking about where this employee can fit in our program, right? As I mentioned earlier, sometimes the natural tendency is to say, okay, I want someone who's got the exact same experience as my restaurant, but they come in with a little bit of mental baggage. And I've been proud to say I've taken employees who did not have the Gramercy Tavern experience or the Rainbow Room type of experience, but they were kind and smart and had a great work ethic and a desire to make people happy. And most importantly, a desire to learn. And those employees are like sponges. They want to learn your method. So if you can find that employee, but it starts with the interview process and how effectively you interview to find that employee who really can fit the mold or aligns with your core values, you can get them on there pretty fast because they want to do the job for you.
Let's take, I love this right here. Let's go from here into what criteria do you think people should be looking for if they want to mold leaders? So if you just want to fill a spot and you don't care, and you don't care about in development and someone who's breathing can fill the spot. But what are you looking for? And what would you say if you want to be diligent, you want to be thoughtful about this? What should people be looking for?
Yeah. So over the years, and starting at my tenure at the Union Square Hospitality Group, we had a process we called the 51%. Right. We had our core values, which was enlightened hospitality, but we had the 51%. And you may have heard that term. I think it originally started with Richard Melman out of Chicago and the Let Us Entertain You group, maybe different words. But the theory is this: if I look at the totality of the employee I'm interviewing, 51% of them are the things I cannot teach. Are they empathetic? Are they kind? Do they have the desire to make people happy? Do they have a great work ethic? Are they inquisitive? Do they have the desire to learn? The other 49% are the technical specifications of the job. So if they have that 51%, my belief is that you can teach the other 49%. So focus on the 51 as the starting point. If the person has that 49%, all the better. That's good as gold. But it's really that 51% that counts. From there, during the interview process, I'm asking myself, a number of different questions to find out if this person is the one I want to align with. And these are questions I'm not asking that person the question. I want them answered during the course of our conversation. And so number one is, does this person have the ability to be, the best person in their class or one of the top 3 employees in their category, whether it's a manager, whether it's a server, or whatever. If I had this employee over for dinner with my wife or your significant other, whoever, think you're nuts. If another restaurant, my competitor, was going to hire this person, would I feel happy or sad? Right. So and you can ask other questions along with that. Would you want them, waiting on the most important person? When the president came into town, would you want them waiting on the president? So you ask those questions and find out the answers. You're not asking those questions. You're asking them in your head.
Yeah.
But you want them answered. And if you come up with yes, all the way along, you're like, okay, this is really great. I've got a great employee. So you found someone you can align with. You found someone who is teachable, who shares your core values in some form or another. And then it makes it that much easier to align with them, despite backgrounds or experience.
I love the 49 and the 51. I think that's a great takeaway for people here, just even looking at that.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to know, we'll come to this in a moment. Think about some of the skills that you train in the 49. What are some of those skills besides industry specific, like how to mix a cocktail, for example? That's going to be industry specific. But what are some of the general ones? And then I want to align something that I recently did on another segment, another podcast, another segment. I talked about 5 drivers of success. Mm-hmm. I talked about intelligence. I talked about, and really the intelligence to be able to do something like the medical know-how. And then I talked about the experience. Do you know how to? Do you have the brains to be able to do it? Do you know how to do it? And then these right here, I would say probably are over in the 49%. And then there's the drive. Do you want to do it? And you're saying that's the 51% over here. And then emotional intelligence, which empathy is the key part of it. That was my 6th book that I wrote, was on that. And then communication. And communication is one of those things where you might be more natural on the 51%, but you can train, which is what I do, train on the 49%. But it's interesting as you were going through that, Nick, I was thinking, okay, this is 51%. Okay, these are the 49%. And this one is almost straddling the middle right there. But that's correct. What is it that you train, and especially as you were a consultant or as you've done some training, you got a book, when you train to the 49%, what are some key training areas?
I'm going to start with communication out of the gate.
I like it. I like you even more now.
and there's some specifics within communication that I think a lot of particularly young managers, young leaders miss, right? They're not communicating with credibility, right? They're not speaking with candor, they're not speaking with clarity, and they're not exuding commitment, right? So when I'm talking to a young manager, a leader, a server, it doesn't matter. And this is across any industry. This could be retail, this could be, it could be the medical profession, it could be an office environment. When you speak with clarity, when you exude commitment that I'm committed to you, I'm providing candor to that employee, that level of communication, that deep level, that earnest level of communication is the one thing I try to impress upon the people that I'm mentoring as leaders, because I try to explain to them that by communicating in the most effective manner possibly, in the most clarity, with the most commitment, with the most candor, you're really gaining trust of the employee that you're trying to manage, and it makes your life that much easier. And the minute you go astray, the minute you go away from that line of communication, that's where problems can happen. I would say the second thing I like to teach people is how to engage the employees you're managing. And there's a number of different ways, right? You can engage the heart, you can engage the mind, you can engage the body, you can engage the spirit. I think this is the way I look at employee retention as well. But it's not an easy thing to train, because you're kind of morphing in that nebulous zone between the 51 and the 49%, and who's got it and who doesn't. But you can put in some tactical measures. So if I say, if I'm going to engage the heart and the body of my employees, one, I want to take care of them, right? That's my number one goal. So think of team building exercises that you can do, or in the days of my time at Union Square Hospitality Group, we would take people on ski trips if they wanted to go skiing, or we would do an employee barbecue where we shut down on Memorial Day weekend, right? All 6 restaurants at one point in time, everyone came out to the employee barbecue, right? And the managers were doing all the cooking, and we had the softball games and things like that. A lot of people would think we were nuts for closing. That's a lot of money you could be making. Yeah. But reality is, by closing and giving everyone that time, that voluntary time to hang out and just have fun with their coworkers, and rub elbows with the management and other leaders, the ownership and the other leaders, I should say, you really had a blast. And you come back, everyone's had a great time. Everyone's had a couple of days off. It's a holiday weekend. They come back and they're more juiced and more energized, and therefore the business became more profitable. So I go to my grave thinking that way. And it's the same whether you're engaging the body or the spirit, when you're engaging the spirit, right? You want to get people happy about being at work. So it's a matter of knowing them fully, communicating that I hear you. I understand. I'm listening to you. How's your family? I mean, just simple things that a manager can do to help engage the employees that are working for them. And in the simplest way, I've often said to managers, like, look, if you're stuck getting through this, then there is a process to make it work. Put on your calendar every day that you are on site, one employee that you want to make their day. It could be Mike today, it could be Nick tomorrow, it could be Josie the day after, it could be Jose the day after that. It does not matter. And this might sound terrible that you're being programmatic about it, but how do you get a good habit ingrained is by making it part of your day and part of your process. So today is Mike's day. I'm going to chat with Mike. How was his book? How's his family? What's going on? What's he doing this weekend? Just engaging them. The next thing you know is you've built up a great rapport with that employee. Your business gets better and it becomes more profitable in the end.
I think that's just fantastic. I love these two areas of training because they're not the ones that sometimes just come up right away.
Correct.
The hard skill of doing this.
That's correct.
Or we have a management book and we're going to take you through the management book.
Yeah. Right.
One of the things I do is I do train the trainer programs. And when I'm training the trainer, I always say, just got to make sure that you aren't just, the book is a guide.
Correct.
It's not the dictator. And sometimes we get stuck with, well, I know this and I'm gonna teach it like it's gotta be. Mm-hmm. And I love that you're flexing into these other areas of engagement and communication.
Right. I mean, I think the mindset of the guidebook is important, right? I'm very much about the employee manual, the management manual, whatever, but that is for the process of the day-to-day operations, right? Yeah. You need to open by this period of time. You need to have this much side work done. You need to have this much prep work done, whatever the case may be. And in any office environment, you have a specificity of how your day needs to go from the technical standpoint. That's the guidebook. That's the management handbook. But when you are looking to get people motivated, it's about engaging the heart, engaging the mind and the spirit. And then by doing that technical process just gets easier because they want to do it for you. Yeah. So you're training someone to engage the heart, most importantly.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. Even in our time here, when you and I were talking beforehand, I was like, okay, here's the questions I got. It's the guide, but it's led to some of the conversation we're having, but it's not dictating where we're staying. I think that's a very important a distinction for people who want to develop leaders. What are some of the challenges that you see right now, which is actually on my guide, but because I want to make sure I get to it, what are some of the challenges that you see facing employee team development right now?
So it's today, right at this moment, I'll call it post-pandemic, as we're trying to get through the end of this pandemic. The challenges are great on every level, right? And I think that in the papers, the press, the business media, whatever, we've heard the Great Resignation, which I don't like that term because I don't think it's the resignation per se. I think it is more people realize there's another way to live. And there are things that are important. I'm not going to take that crappy job I just had. I'm going to move on to something where they really care about me and what I want. I want that quality of life, right? So the challenge we face today as leaders is how do we provide our employees with this great work environment while still maintaining the process necessary to run a profitable and successful business, right?
Yeah.
And that's just not easy. There's no way around it, and it's different for each individual business, right? In hospitality, food and beverage and hospitality, it's one thing. In the office environment, like a Google or an Amazon, it's a completely different environment, right? Different thing. But I go back to, and I will always lean back to aligning on the core values and engaging the heart and the spirit, most importantly, because if you do that, you're going to win the employee over so that they want to work for you, most importantly. Then you've got the tactical challenges of, we all know that the pandemic showed that I really need to pay my employees more money, right? Not every environment around the world, certainly not Wall Street, but or I shouldn't say Wall Street, excuse me, like financial management, things like that, where they're already making a lot of money. That's not the motivator. When you're dealing with the challenges of the restaurant, retail, and hourly employee environment of hotels and so on, there's a lot more than just the raising the level of pay. It is the balance, work-life balance, I think, is key, that we've forgotten. A lot of businesses have just forgotten over the years. So find a way to make that happen. Maybe it is a 4-day work week for certain employees who can do it. I've heard someone testing out for managers, no less, a 50-hour work week over 4 days. They get 3 days off. On one of those days, they are required to do some of their quote homework, if you will. They can work from home, do their computer, but they have 3 full days off. I'm curious to see how that experiment is going to work out, but I think it's a great work-life balance for managers who are typically working 6 days a week, whether it's on-site or home, and sometimes even 7 by virtue of they just have so much work to do. They have to catch up on Saturdays and Sundays when they're not in the office. So the challenges are great, but I will always go back to, if you're leading and managing through core values, if you're engaging your employees' heart and spirit, and you're communicating with clarity and candor, God, you can make it work. And again, I'll go to my grave believing that it's not all about, let me just give you $2 an hour more, or $5 an hour, or $50,000, whatever the case may be.
We've realized that throwing money at things doesn't just
automatically
make it better. And that's
correct.
Almost everywhere. That there's so much more. So I think in so much of this is that engagement in those 4 different areas, and then the communication of that engagement with clarity, as you're talking about there, and candor. Wrapping up our time, talk to me about candor and clarity, what that looks like to you, and really maybe if you were sitting across the table here in Mercer Island, you and I are both from the Washington State, and you're sitting there, and someone's coming to you, they're a new manager, and they're just struggling, and you knew that candor was an area that you just needed to call them on it. What would that look like? And just in an experienced leader to someone who's newer.
So I think that the best thing you can do for an employee, I as a leader to a manager that I'm grooming and mentoring, the best thing I can do is be honest about what I like and what I don't like in their day-to-day job. Maybe like and don't like is not the right word, but you're doing this really, really well. You need to grow in this area. And by providing them a literal roadmap on how to succeed, and being honest about that, and honest with my expectations are, they're going to respect that. They may not like what they hear, but they're going to respect the fact that I gave them the honest feedback that they deserve, most importantly, so that they can succeed. And if you do that enough, the employee, you're, again, speaking with candor, you're speaking with clarity and specificity of, you do this really, really well. I want you to keep doing it. This, not so much. So let's fix this. And here's how I would fix it if it was me. And this is what I'm suggesting you can do to fix this particular area of your game. By doing that, you're building an employee who trusts you to give them honest feedback. Again, they may not like it, which makes it difficult, but they will respect it. And over time, I can guarantee you they're going to get better, or in the worst case scenario, they will fire themselves, right? They will move on to an environment that is better suited to their gifts, if you will.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good final thought there, because I think there's a lot of, sometimes we don't share candidly what we believe.
Correct.
If we're afraid that they're not going to like us.
That's right. It's not about being liked. It's about being respected. And once you're respected, usually people like you.
I agree. I agree. Well, Nick, talk to us about your book. Talk to us about where people can find you. And you've shared some great stuff, and just just appetizer into the years of experience that you have doing this and into what you do. Share with our audience where we can find you.
Great. Well, of course, you can find me on LinkedIn at Nick Mautone, same Facebook and Instagram. But I do have a website that's being refreshed as we speak. It's www.nickmautone.com or Mautone-enterprises.com. That'll lead you to the same spot. I'm currently working on my 5th book. I've had 4 books come out previously, all on cocktails and home entertaining. This book is called Life Behind Bars, my lessons and learnings from my 40-year journey in the bar and hospitality industry. So I'm hopeful it'll come out at some point next year. I'm out there pitching it as we speak and writing it as we speak. But it's going to come out whether it's self-published or published by someone else. I'm going to make it happen. I'm also working on a podcast that should launch in a couple of weeks, different from what you're doing. It's sort of the companion to my book, Life Behind Bars. The podcast will be called Nick Mautone Straight Up. I've got interviews with some luminaries in the hospitality industry, such as Danny Meyer, who I used to work with, and some who shall be named later, celebrity chefs and wine importers and so on. But talking about our learnings over the years in the hospitality industry, but most importantly, how it applies to leadership, mentorship, everything you're talking about, but through the lens of the hospitality industry that I grew up in. So,
one of the things I think is just a smart idea for people is to cross-train.
Yes.
And I mean, if you're in the tech industry, learn the leadership secrets of the hospitality industry and vice versa. And it's always been helpful to see, like I speak and I write, and I recently listened to Will Smith's book, and it made me a better narrator of my own books.
Sure. That's great.
Great stuff. Hey, Nick, this has been great, though. Thank you so much for your time today. Thanks for sharing.
My pleasure.
I really appreciate it.
Look forward to it. Thank you, Mike.
And to all of our subscribers, thank you so much for taking some time to watch, to listen, to share this with others. Comment on this. Look up Nick's information. It's going to be in the show notes down below. So check that out. And until next time, it's been a Masters of Employee Development with Mike Acker and Nick Mautone.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to Advance with Mike Acker, a podcast designed to provide an edge for leaders through improving practical leadership skills and increasing confidence in speaking. Mike is a best-selling author and business owner who has helped many leaders increase their skills and their confidence, propelling them to new heights in their personal and professional endeavors. Join an incredible group of professionals taking the steps to become better leaders at connect.stepstoadvance.com. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.